Stuff about this movie, man. It's just so my dumb data, and I do that my dumb data out of fun. I don't do it ever in jest, but there are moments where you're like, did Matthew McConaughey just float 30 feet? He floats in Angels in the Outfield too. Angel carries him in the outfield. He floats a lot in movies, but once again, I said this before, but the questions in this movie are good questions. They're all fun questions. They're thought provoking. I don't know. I would take part in a Thing discussion, even though it's because I think Thing fans just love the movie. They don't want to prove. I've never heard someone on a soapbox saying they're right about a specific character. They just love the movie and like talking about it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you and I could do that all day and we have no answer to any of it.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's just it. It's like I could give like 20 proofs for why I think X in the movie, but then I could reverse it and give 20 proofs for Y, which is the opposite thing. Like you can Keith David, like this, that, and the other. Like Kurt Russell at one point says, if I was one of those, if I was the only one who wasn't the Thing, you guys would all jump me. But we don't know that about the Thing.
Do they know, since each speck of blood, because those two things get separated, right? The dog and the Thing at the Norwegian camp get separated. And then the Thing comes back and almost infects Bennings. So they're two separate entities infecting. So maybe. So you think maybe, because then all the blood wants to survive when it's being attacked with the hot stuff. So that's another geez Louise question. But all right, how about this? This is a fact. Bennings.
But like, is this a hive mind or not? There's a big question.
Is this like in Deep Rising? How does that creature's tentacles know how to chase a? Never mind. But the Bennings thing Bennings with his lobster hands and weird scream.
That was a snow cone of fingers. That was crazy.
Isn't that just haunting? His look on his face and that scream. Like what?
Right.
So was it halfway assimilated? I guess it just wasn't a complete assimilation. So it was a hybrid of the two.
Well, and who knows? We don't know we don't even know the most basic notion of the rules of this thing, other than the fact that some kind of contact develops some kind of cellular overtaking and imitation that makes you seem like yourself, and we don't know to what level of control that you or it has, or both, right? So there's so many layers of unknowns. Like if that thing had 10 more minutes or 60 more minutes with Bennings, would he just pass as Bennings? Maybe. Oh. And then the other question is would Bennings' mind still be active, or would it just be emulating it?
So I'm copying Ryan Levengood, your cousin, copying the movie Tommy Boy when I say, oh my God. Right. Bennings was killed, and they filmed the scene where he was killed earlier in the film with a screwdriver. He has a screwdriver death in the film. And then in the early first draft, do you want to hear something awesome, John?
Keep going.
Bennings.
I'm listening.
He wants to escape. So he gets on a snowmobile and is driving a snowmobile over the ice. Mandalorian style, I guess, that, the first scene with the ice monster. He's flooring a jet ski. The creature comes out of the water and stops him from leaving. So there's an underwater creature. Yeah, in the storyboards. So if you watch the Scream Factory Blu-ray and watch the cast and crew interview, they show you all the storyboards of Bennings getting killed by this thing swimming underwater, busting through the ice, grabbing him from the snowmobile. But obvious budget constraints. You can't really film that.
Well, there's a pretty big logic constraint there too.
Yeah, if the thing just wants to escape.
Because if it could swim that fast in frigid water, it could just hit civilization on its own in a few hours.
Just yeehaw! Yeah.
Well, maybe it gets cold. I don't know, but still, you know what I mean? Like that is a serious power there, and to break through the ice and the strength and the whatever, like that's a lot. There's a lot going on there. That's some comic book stuff.
I also think the Thing wasn't helped. So two things screwed over the plan. This is what I think the plan could have been. The dog gets there.
We're ignoring the Bennings sidebar now.
Yeah, we're going back. Plot. You know me, man. I'm a pinball machine with the person just slapping the handles, and I'm flying like a pinball over. But so okay, the dog gets somebody. We don't know who it is. It's a silhouette. We know it's Kurt Russell's stunt double. That's the silhouette in the room, by the way, in case you didn't know that. So someone's already assimilated. Now, if it's a hive mind, that thing could take its time. However, they take the thing from the Norwegian area, that thing gets overzealous, right? And kills. If it's a hive mind, it's already done it. It could wait throughout the rest of the year and slowly get people, correct? That one guy. It wouldn't.
Sure, but even hive mind has a lot of different ways of expressing itself.
Because the thing had already won technically by becoming a man, by becoming Palmer. So
well, right, and it could have just stayed as Palmer indefinitely. And this is where I come back to what level of sentience does the thing actually have when it's assimilated and mimicking someone?
Now, I have another.
This is where I come back to if it was as smart as it comes off, it would never have done all the things that we saw in the movie.
So you don't. Maybe it was a prisoner and it just escaped, and it's just a pain in the ass. But also another. This is really random. But Gary, the boss, how good is actor Donald Moffat at? He has a very sensitive side to him, don't you think, Gary? You know, he obviously shoots the guy. He's very kind of stern, but he also has a very sensitive delivery that I like a lot in this movie. What do you think about Gary in this movie?
I agree with you, and I think that if for no other reason that was obvious to a viewer, but I agree there were several moments. I think that the way that he passes over power when people are concerned that he's the thing.
Yeah. Because
he says, I think that... Right, but I think that all of you would be more comfortable if someone else was in charge, and he sets down the gun, and he wasn't asked to do that. He was being threatened, yes, but he volunteered this notion. He wasn't told that first. He was very calm about it. I agree. That's an interesting character.
He was almost hurt. And another interesting thing, I don't know if you kind of noticed this throughout, but there's a couple of really interesting scenes between Big Man, Clark, who wasn't one, but he gets shot in the head. Clark, big man Clark, and Childs, Keith David. During the rehearsal process, when they had argument scenes, they were the biggest. So they were talking about this on the documentary. They're two of the biggest guys of the entire group, just physically. So
they're both like 6'2" and 6'4", right?
Yeah, just
Isn't Keith David like 6'2"-ish and that guy like 6'4"?
Yeah, big, like probably 200 plus each. You know, just the biggest physically imposing guys. And they kind of, throughout the film, you see this sort of, some weird looks, but I love that aspect of their characters. And they did that during the 2 months of rehearsals that they did before the movie. But I kind of love, or 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 weeks, probably two, whatever. But I love, you see little scenes. So when I like that Clark has a tiny little knife, even though he's like the biggest guy there. It's like a Far Side comic where the rhino's holding a knife.
He's rather meek for a big guy in this movie.
Yeah, he's super nice dude. But I kind of liked the physicality between those two. And I only just learned about that by listening to the interviews, but it adds a whole new wrinkle. And also, I don't think I ever appreciated how good Knowles does. I hate that he disappears in the movie, but T.K. Carter, when he cuts loose MacReady because he finds his stuff, he finds like his jacket and everything, I love how cold acting he does. He obviously wasn't that cold, because they were filming on stages in California, but that dude knocked it out of the park during that scene. I loved it. I thought I think Knowles is a lot better now in the later scenes. I liked him a lot in this film, more so than when I watched him, earlier in this. But I kind of liked that scene. I know this is weird, but he looked believably cold, which is a weird thing to say.
Well, yeah, it's even because he has to repeat himself. Like, no, man, I told you, I cut him loose. It's like he's in a panic and no one else in the room is in a panic.
Yeah.
But that panic was really partly the cold, right? No, I agree.
It's just, I think what I like about what Carpenter did, he got a bunch of serious New York actors. So the guy who plays Windows, his character wasn't even Windows. He just went to John Carpenter and just said, I've been thinking about this, man, and I'm going to wear these sunglasses and everyone's going to call me Windows. And people started making fun of him for it on set. They're like, "Wow, you're being pretentious and taking it too seriously." But these were all a bunch of New York guys. So Keith David was teaching, at the time, he was teaching, stage monologues in a college atmosphere. So he hired all these really great actors to be in this A-list, serious kind of adult. When I say adult, I'm not saying like a XXX. I'm saying like just a mature horror film. And that's another smart thing. He didn't just get you think about the later Friday the 13th movies. I know they're younger teenagers, but he hired actual serious actors, Wilford Brimley, for these roles. And I think that's another reason why it's aged so well, is even the supporting characters are good.
Everyone's good. Yeah.
I know I just went on a long monologue, but yeah,
everyone's good.
This is my biggest problem about prepping for this, is I didn't want this to become you and I just fawning about this movie, but there's nothing to not fawn about in this movie. I love it.
I don't want to sound ageist, but I feel like most people who don't like this film, who fancy themselves knowledgeable about film, fall under the notion of, I'm 26 and I just saw The Thing for the first time and here are my feelings.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying there aren't 26-year-olds who are very knowledgeable, but I feel like this is a movie. This isn't the highbrow horror movie like Get Out that is meant for you to watch it. And there's a lot, and Get Out is a very complicated movie, right? But Get Out is a movie that I feel like you can walk out of rich with deep thoughts. The Thing is one of those films where I feel like you get more out of it the second and third viewing than you did the first. With
Wow.
Get Out, or Us, I think that, like most movies, you get diminishing returns. You got most of it in your first viewing. You get yet less your second viewing, yet less your third viewing. The Thing, I feel like I just keep getting more. That's unusual. And so, again, I'm not trying to be ageist. This is more just, how many films have you seen and how many times have you seen them? The Thing is one of those things that you really got to live with for a while. And it doesn't explain much for you, right? Even highbrow horror, they leave a lot of mystery, but they still explain a lot of things deeply. This movie explains Jack.
Yeah. You got to watch it.
The explanation is in the character dynamics.
Yeah.
So it's that. And then I think the other people who don't like it are people who aren't that into horror, or who haven't seen much horror, or who haven't seen enough horror to appreciate older horror. Because art history is like film history. You usually don't appreciate the older, basic, unsleek stuff when you don't see it much. So again, it's a delicate thing. But I do think that The Thing is an older horror movie that younger people can appreciate early in their film appreciation stages, because there's so many good shots compared to other films in the early 80s. Like this film, these have shots that rival most films in general of its time.
I mean, this is, if you count inflation, this was about a $60 million horror film. So the cinematography, they had time to get the good shots. And that's a problem a lot of horror movies don't have. So I think that's another reason why it holds up too. I mean, it's just so well done. And this is random. I know I'm cutting you off, but I have learned that I've really started to appreciate the wardrobe in Jordan Peele's horror movies, because in Get Out, in the beginning, they're wearing like matching chambray stuff. And then she starts going away from him and puts some red in her outfit to signify villainy. And at the end, she's wearing the crisp, clean kind of cult.
Sanitized, yeah.
Which is a really cool transition in characters. And then in Us, I just read an article from the New York Times that breaks down the shirts in the movie and how they relate to the characters. So I never knew that, but I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, I mean, well, Jordan Peele, though, he's like a tactician in execution, whereas John Carpenter is a tactician in staging, and they're two different things, right? And it's not to say that they both aren't good at both, but one of them really excels at one and the other really excelled at...
The paranoia is second to none in this film. I do think he's less about the characters in this movie and more about the mood and the paranoia, would you say? Because there's no real development from the character. There's no time. You don't need full development because there's no time for that. But this is more about the mood and the paranoia, correct?
Right. I mean, we're operating on what? Basically a 36-hour timeline, I think. And you're right. It's like the development, and the only developments really is like person A no longer trusts persons C or F.
Is he making oatmeal?
But no, you're right. It doesn't need character development. Instead, all we get are character revelations. We just reveal more about characters, right? But and then we find that, Kurt Russell is introduced to us as some guy who's impatient with Chess Wizard and literally destroys his whole machine because he's pissed off that he lost. And you think, gosh, he's probably hardly better than a mechanic or, the helicopter pilot here. But it's one of those things in any movie or any real situation is when the pressure starts to mount, we find leaders where we don't always expect them. And so it's just as things happen, his people's roles become revealed.